On this episode of Cigars and Sea Stories, we are sitting down with Shawn Rhodes. Now, do you guys remember Joker in Full Metal Jacket? Well, today we have a real-life Joker on the show. Our guest today, Shawn Rhodes, was actually served in the United States Marine Corps from 2001 to 2005. Shawn was a super-pogue. Did you ever run into one of those Marines on a field op or on deployment who was running around with a camera exposing their position and looking generally lost? That was Shawn. As a combat correspondent, he shared the stories of Marines from 24 countries and 2 deployments to Iraq in 2003 and 2004. And his work was featured in hundreds of news outlets, including Time, CNN, and NBC. Today, he works with companies to accelerate strategic execution while reducing its costs. As an international keynote speaker, nationally syndicated columnist, and Fortune 100 consultant, Shawn shares what he learned in his TEDx talk and new book, Pivot Point, Turn on a Dime Without Sacrificing Results. He is also involved with helping veterans transition from college into the workforce. Shawn, how's it going, brother?
It's a good day in Tampa, Florida. How about for you guys?
Right on. Well, likewise across the nation. Yeah, I'm down here in Raleigh. Bennett, where are you at?
I am in Syracuse, New York, and it's sunny and beautiful as well, surprisingly.
Really?
Yeah.
So we've got the East Coast on lockdown on this episode.
Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah, from north to south for most.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So what do you do down in Tampa, Shawn? You said consultant.
I'm a kind of live-at-home consultant and keynote speaker and workshop provider to companies. So I'm always out talking to folks, networking with the big wigs, getting my name known, writing stuff for columns all over the place, just having a good time living life.
Nice. So what wound up taking you down that path after you left the Corps?
Oh, it's always a woman, isn't it?
Yeah. For the most part, yeah.
Okay.
I guess you're right.
Yeah, good thing is I ended up marrying her. Now, people ask me how my wife and I met, and the listeners might appreciate this because it's always a great line. I actually ended up marrying the family babysitter.
Oh, my God, that's awesome.
Yeah. Now, the backstory behind that, of course, is she wasn't my babysitter. She was the next generation's babysitter. But we met at a family gathering, fell in love. She was going to teaching at UF out in Gainesville, Florida, and I was up in North Carolina, near Asheville, actually, and said, you know what, I'm tired of this 10.5-hour drive, man. I got to get closer. So took a job as a civilian down on MacDill Air Force Base, and that's what got me to Tampa.
Good old MacDill.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Now, where were you outside of Asheville?
Yeah, I was working on the Blue Ridge Parkway, which has its headquarters in Asheville, North Carolina. Was a park ranger, with a flat hat, chasing bears out of picnic tables and baskets and all that crap,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, man.
That was my gig. Good times. Then I went to school in Western Carolina University out west of Asheville and grew up even further west than that with, moonshiners and banjo pickers and pretty incredible people.
Awesome. Yeah, we got some friends down in Henderson.
Yeah, great team. Love it.
So yeah, it's some friends of Mike's too. Actually, they run. John and Nicole Massey. They run the Veterans Healing Farm right out of Henderson. There, is it Henderson or Hendersonville?
Hendersonville.
Yeah, Hendersonville. So yeah, man.
Yeah, don't go up to Henderson by where I live.
Yeah, Henderson's
don't do
not.
That.
That's not as pretty.
Hendersonville's
way nicer. So yeah, man.
That's fantastic. I didn't realize
Asheville,
that you had such a connection to North Carolina when we first talked. Because
I love that state.
When we first spoke, I mean, this is great. Like Jeremy Nuff introduced us. Huge shout out and a thank you to him over at Spartan Media, who's fellow Marine who wound up doing our website for us. So thank you for the intro there, Jeremy. But we've each done a TED Talk, and that was kind of like in the intro. And I originally thought that we were going to just speak about Shoshin Consulting. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yep, that's it.
Now, how'd you come across Shoshin Consulting? Because I like the loop that we spoke of, and I dug deeper on the website and what have you. Where did that come from?
Yeah, since I was a little kid, I've been pretty involved with Eastern philosophy and the martial arts. That's actually what got me into the Marine Corps. I had this weird idea that I could be a samurai, and
Nice.
like every kid wants to be something when they
Yes.
grow up, and that was kind of my weird thing. So when I was looking at, what do I name my consulting firm, I had to look at something that would continually remind me about why I wanted to get into this business and what I hope to be able to give to the world. And Shoshin was it. So the word translates as beginner's mind.
Hmm. Right on.
Yeah.
And how'd you
So,
come up with that? Just that's
there's a famous Zen monk named D.T. Suzuki. He was one of the first Zen monks to come to America from Japan and kind of teach all of us Westerners what was up. And he had this great phrase. I think he said, in a experienced person's mind, there are very few options when you're presented with a problem. And I'm paraphrasing here. So let's say you're a squad leader in the Marine Corps. You're out on patrol somewhere near Fallujah, and you start taking fire. Well, this is your fourth or fifth deployment now, because you've been busted down a few times, so you're still a squad leader, and you know exactly what to do, right? You've trained in this. You know exactly what needs to happen. The challenge with that is the enemy probably knows what you're going to do too, because he's been fighting this war for a couple decades now. However, the beginner in the platoon, beginner in your squad, the little PFC, he sees something and his mind isn't really locked into, well, we have to do A, B, and C because that's the way we've been trained. His first thought is to crap his pants, and then his second thought is, how do I get myself and my squad out of here alive? So it's the beginner's mind that really is where innovation comes about. And if you look in history in the Marine Corps, it tends to be the people that innovated solutions that we look to as our heroes.
brilliant. I love it. Very cool. Yeah, because a little bit of a lead in. We share a similar philosophy in that we should take our Marine Corps skill set and springboard basically off of where we're coming from, specifically as Marines, and where we're intending on going. So how do you actually help businesses using this tool, what you've got here?
Yeah, so I figured out when I was working for the government first, which is a bureaucracy that moves so slowly, I'm surprised that anything really gets done. And I noticed how messed up that was. And then working for companies as a civilian, after the Corps, seeing how we kept making the same mistakes over and over again, everybody felt disempowered at the lower levels because they just got told what to do, but didn't have a say in how it was done or even, should we be doing this at all? And I thought, in the Marine Corps, we had our share of problems, but even people at the lowest levels felt like they had a say in what was going to go on as they executed their missions. Even people at the lowest levels were able to debrief or do an after action at the end of the patrol and be like, hey, we almost all got killed because we did this. Let's try not to do that again. And I thought, if companies did even a fraction of what kept us successful in the Marine Corps, we'd be a lot better off. And I discovered that as I started rolling this out inside of smaller organizations that they really loved it. And come to find out, even Fortune 100 and 500 companies are really catching on that, if we take the time to listen to our people and build their feedback into our plans, we have a greater chance of success any way you look at it.
Nice. Beautiful. Easily digestible concept.
Yeah.
Which means you've broken it down Barney style. So good on you.
Yeah, man.
So you're a war correspondent, huh? You're dancing through gunfire with a goddamn lens instead of a... Well, no, I see you here. You've got your camera and your AR. So
yeah, I wish they'd have given us an AR. That'd have been lovely. They gave me the old school M16s, with the rails on them. I can't even remember which version it was. Maybe like A4 or A3. You guys tell me. But damn, that thing was heavy.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. We used to call him the musket.
Yeah, right. That's musket. Accurate.
We would make... So like the A3 technically, I believe, doesn't exist. But if you put a fixed buttstock lower receiver onto an A4 upper receiver, you basically have got an A3. So that was, there was no real need to put if you put a M4 lower receiver with the adjustable buttstock on it, you would then have essentially a musket with a adjustable buttstock. It wasn't the worst. I was a driver who had I had like no optics. It was iron sights screwed on. I think I had a Surefire. For a little while I had a red dot, but it got in the way, so I took it off. Went back to the iron sights.
Yep, I had iron sights as well, but as you mentioned, they gave me a rifle that they didn't really expect me to use a lot, but I had to take it everywhere I went, just like the rest of us. But they gave me, instead of, some cool high-speed gear, in the middle of Iraq where, everything reflects, they gave me this 3.5-inch piece of glass that I had to point at everybody. So wherever I went, I tended to give away whatever the hell we were doing. And of course, night ops with a flash on a camera, that was another story altogether.
I'm gonna tell you once. All right, I'm gonna tell you once. Get the fuck off my paws. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Let me bust out the flash. Let's do some night ops. Why are you kidding me? Get away from me.
We had a guy. Yeah. Did you ever put this only works every once in a while, I guess, but did you ever put pantyhose over your lens?
No, I never did, because I don't think the photo quality would have been good enough to even use.
Right. So what we did is we used that, you stretch it all the way over and then zoom in and hit it. And you're right, the photo quality is shite. But what it allows you to do is take a picture without glare. Like we used to put pantyhose over top of our objective lens so that we wouldn't have any glare, which works a hell of a lot better than those honeycombs on the front of the RCO. So.
Yeah, and so the question comes, like you guys responded pretty much accurately as to what I got. What are you doing on my patrol? You're going to get us all killed. That combined with the fact that I had, like 2.5 weeks of MCT and everybody else had been through SOI and been, spinning up together pre-deployment training. They just kind of dropped me into these things. So the way that I made friends and influenced people, as they say, was you guys were stuck out in the field for sometimes months at a time, right? But I had to pump back to the rear to get my photos and stories back up to the news wires. So every time that I went back to the rear, every time they sent me back to Camp Fallujah, I would come literally with pockets bulging with cash and a grocery list of stuff to pick up at the BX, over on base.
Yeah.
So when I went back out into the field, I would always, I'd be like that pogue you see with the 3 packs and, the DVD player and the flat screen TV. That was me back delivering all the goodies to the grunts.
Straight up Reagan with a sea bag full of like Copenhagen.
Exactly. Yep. Copenhagen and cigarettes, Gatorade. That's right.
Oh, that's funny.
It's a damn good idea.
Yeah, so that's how I was able to, get along with you guys, even though I often gave away your position.
Frequently.
That's fantastic. Yeah, man. That's the way to do it right there. Freaking, you'd be the most popular guy out there.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it went. And I'll tell you something else is, I love the grunts, absolutely love them, but you guys cannot add because I never had enough money to complete the order.
Shit. Of course not.
Yeah.
Of course not. Of course not. Yeah.
Yep, that's what it was. Yep, we don't do math good. That's what it was.
Unless we had to dial in freaking something to kill somebody.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Then we totally knew how to add. Then the numbers always added up. Right.
Yep.
Oh my God. Well, it's funny because
I need the dope for this rifle real quick. Let's go.
Yep, no problem.
No problem. Boom.
Size of the target in mils times size of the target in it's 1.77 divided by size of the target in mils equals range of target in yards or some shit like that. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The dumbest idiot grunt could like snap that off in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Pow, pow, pow. Yeah.
That's the funniest part.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But try to accurately measure out what a log of Copenhagen is. You never get it right.
or try to pay their bills when they're back in the rear.
That's true.
Oh my God. Well, when I saw that you're a combat correspondent, it reminded me of, we had a guy, his name escapes me, and I wish that I could give him a proper shout out on here, but he did a great video which somehow surfaced up on YouTube, and there were a number of different people that were featured in the video, I being one of them that day, but it reminded me of operating with that dude and being like, this guy is fucking crazy. Like, I remember one time we got back from patrol and the whole muzzle of his rifle was entirely stuffed with sand and rocks and all sorts of shit. And I'm like, why is it like that? And he's like, why? Because, Sergeant, 90% of the time it's slung over my back and I'm kneeling in the sand. Like, he full blown just admitted, yeah, I don't use the gun at all. This is my actual job. I'm taking pictures here. And I mean, I guess it's a good gig. As you said, you're, always flying back to the rear and stuff, but man, missing an opportunity to make pink mist. I just don't know. I don't know if I could give it up. How do you?
Well, you look back on that, and something that I considered over the years that I was in the Corps was I could do a different type of damage with a photograph or a story that went out to 5 million people than you guys could do creating pink mist on a single individual. And that's why they invest time in sending correspondents out into the field is, one, somebody has to tell that story. And it's always the Marine Corps' version of the story, I'll grant you. But the other thing is we can do a lot of damage with publicity. So, pink mist of a different kind, you might say.
I love that. Yeah. No, that's very cool. So what wound up leading your, let's call it, evolution out of the Marine Corps and then down this path? Because you've got a cool background in the business world here. I mean, walk us through this. You wind up leaving the Corps, then what?
Used the GI Bill to go to college. And I was one of those dudes that was like in the MWR tent during the second deployment, figuring out like, how do I apply to college? Because I knew I wasn't going to do this again.
Yeah, right.
Right. And I was the story that the career planners at Camp Lejeune actually used. Like, I was the guy they pointed to and said, let me tell you about this kid. He had registered for college, knew what classes he was going to be taking in the fall, and he was still deployed at Camp Fallujah. Right. That was me. So went to college, hit it hard, but my plan was actually to be a high school history teacher. And this was like smack dab in the middle of the recession in 2005 to 2007, like right when everything started to tank. And all those high school teachers that were supposed to retire decided that, once they saw their 401ks crap out, that wasn't going to happen. So I couldn't get a job doing it. I said, all right, tried substitute teaching for a while, almost as bad as being in Iraq. And then, said, all right, I'll go work for the government because I got this veterans preference thing that I hear about. So I'll try that. So that's how it ended up at the Park Service, working on the Blue Ridge Parkway. Ended up, through the lady that ended up marrying my lovely wife, moving to Tampa, Florida, doing the same thing I was doing for the Marine Corps, but just working for the Air Force. And if anybody's ever made the transition from the Marine Corps to the Air Force, it's a completely different mindset about everything.
Yeah. Well, and you were telling me about working as a civilian, but then the uniform regulations.
Yeah. So I was what they call an Air Reserve technician. In the Marine Corps, I think they, you guys could tell me what they call them, but the guys that keep the reserve unit kind of running in between drills.
Oh yeah, like oh god, I&I duty.
Yeah, I&I duty.
I&I
duty. Yep. So that's basically what I was doing for the Air Force, but instead of being like active duty Marine just assigned to a reserve unit, I was a straight civilian assigned to a reserve unit. And when the guys came in to do their UTAs, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, then I would transition into military status. So I'd be, right there with them doing a UTA. Well, the tricky thing about this whole gig is that I'm in a military uniform with military rank on as a civilian. So if anything ever went down, I would be considered a combatant because I'm wearing the uniform, but I would be in no way covered by the SGLI, medical benefits, nothing. I'd be just like you walking down the road today, getting hit by a terrorist attack, and they'd say, well, so sorry, but deal with it.
Right.
So that's kind of how I ended up in the Air Force and what I was doing there. And, long story short, the transition into business, about 2012, I don't know if you guys remember, they sequestered every civilian employee because Congress couldn't get their budget worked out.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of punishing, the Senate and House of Representatives by saying you guys can't agree on a budget, they instead punished the entire U.S. government workforce by sending us all home without pay.
Right.
And that's when I decided that I was not going to put the security of my career in the hands of politicians anymore. So I gave them my notice, said, I'm going to go try this on my own. That's how I ended up in the business world.
Gotcha. Jeez. Excuse me. Yeah, man. No, I feel you. That sequestration, we all felt it also in the disabilities and stuff like that as well. So if anybody out there with a rating, it's shut down. And of course, you don't realize any of that's going to wind up happening. So it makes perfect sense. So as you do step out on your own, did you go straight into Shoshin?
Yep, that was my firm. And when I started it, it was mostly in executive coaching and small business coaching. So I was one of those guys, even in the Marine Corps, and definitely when I was working down at MacDill, I kind of had an open door policy that wasn't my choice. Like people would just come in, sit down, and just start telling me their problems. And I looked around on the wall and be like, I don't see a psychology degree anywhere, but I just, I learned in the Marine Corps how to be a good listener. They taught me listening skills. Do you remember that MCI class? No?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Listening skills. So I figured, why don't I charge people for this instead of having to go to school, to get the doctorate in psychology? I just let people do it on their own. And I did pretty well at it, still had the knack for just listening to people and kind of coaching them along to do what they knew was in their best interest, but just didn't have the, accountability to make happen on their own. And discovered that businesses would pay me a lot more for this service, and I was able to make a bigger impact. The larger the business, the larger the impact. Mm-hmm. So I just started working my way up and eventually ended up inside of Fortune 100 companies.
Cool.
Wow. Yeah, I played Air Force for a little while too, but as a civilian as well. And I played Army too, so I've been all over the joint. I worked for security forces in the Air Force, but as a security specialist.
Okay.
So that was real fun.
Those guys are the closest to Marines that I ever came across. Like they still had, that mindset.
Right. They still do have that mindset, but I can tell you as a civilian working for them, it was pretty cool because everyone called me Mr.
Right.
So it was always Mr. Tanton or Sir. You know what I mean? So that was a little getting used to. And I loved the one thing that threw me off with the Air Force is that no matter whether you're a senior enlisted or you're an officer, they call the airmen still call you sir or ma'am. So it was like, a master sergeant would walk in and they'd be like, "How are you today, sir?" And it was yes, sir, no, sir. And I was like, wait a minute, that's a master sergeant. Not, you know what I mean? And that was the shit that threw me off at first. It was pretty funny, but
what threw me off, and in the civilian world, you can still get like counseled, just like you can in the military, right? They sit you down and give you this counseling sheet. So the one holdover I had from my time in the Marine Corps was saluting indoors, right? No Marine ever will salute indoors. I've never seen it happen. It's like you even try to raise your hand to your forehead and you just can't get it there. There's some kind of mental block, right?
Right.
But in the Air Force, they salute indoors like it's going out of style. So, I kept doing my job and they put me up for a couple awards and I had to go to the, base theater to have the wing commander give me this award. And I had to tell my boss, I'm happy to accept the award, sir, but I'm not saluting. What do you mean you're not saluting? You're in the Air Force now. I'm like, no, dude. One, I'm a civilian. And two, my drill instructor would find me and throttle me.
I'm waiting to get popped in the back of the head here.
Exactly. I'm waiting for somebody to square me away and like the knife hands to come out of somewhere, right?
Right.
Can we just?
What the hell
I'm either doing it underarms or outside.
Exactly. And I was neither of those things. So they had to give me they presented the award to somebody else on my behalf. But that was the beginning of the end where I was like, this is not the right culture for me. Love the Air Force. Those guys do a great job. Our planes can't fly without them, even in the Marine Corps, right?
Yeah.
It's the Air Force that keeps them in the air. But still, it's like, I was not a cultural fit for that organization. And I knew it. They knew it. So it was good that we parted ways when we did.
Yeah, I was at Tyndall. You were at MacDill. I've gone down to MacDill a couple times, but I was down at Tyndall Air Force Base, which is in Panama City. So a little different.
It's the center of the universe, isn't it?
Man.
The what?
That's the center of the universe, isn't it? No. Hmm.
McDill's got some juicy stuff going on there, but Tyndall's a shithole.
Well,
Except for they have the F-22s there. That's about it. But otherwise, it's a dump.
What galls me about the Air Force is when they're walking into our barracks getting substandard living pay.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Like hazard duty pay, stuff like that.
Oh my gosh.
You're weak sauce.
Yeah. You're weak. So weak.
They had these great MWR programs where they would put families up, like whole families, not just you as an enlisted guy, but they'd put you, your next of kin, your kids, all up in these 5-star hotels, like Marco Island and these, resort communities. Yeah, it was good times.
Hell yeah. God, that sounds awesome. See, I thought we were baller status having those cinder block, Havana thingies, whatever, or cabana thingies down in Del Mar. Right. I'm like, yeah, these are nice. Best kept secret in the Corps. Nope. Fuck. You got me. They were all right. You know what I'm saying? Oh my God. So where was your, I've never heard of Chatham, Kent. Where is that?
That is in Ontario, Canada.
Oh, so how'd that work out?
Well, I wanted to do a TEDx talk, and it's kind of a bucket list thing. And I was never famous enough. I don't know how yours worked out, but no one was going to pick me out of a hat. So I looked at the different ones going around here in Florida and in the Southeast, and most of them were run by a committee. So like this committee says, all right, let's look at our do-gooders in the community and look at our theme, and we'll pull, the people we think would be good speakers. Sure. That was never going to happen to me. I was, like I said, maybe a year and a half, 2 years into my business. I had keynoted a couple big things, but it was I wasn't a thought leader like you, good sir. So started looking for the ones started looking for the ones that would actually, take submissions. And those are the TEDx events out in these really rural communities like Chatham, Kent, farming community. And they looked at my, my background and said, yeah, all right, come on up. So I had to cover the airfare and, the hotel stay and everything, but I got to do a TEDx talk. So that was like bucket list check.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah, I'm working on mine too. I actually got accepted and had to turn it down because we moved from Delaware to upstate New York and back, I should say. And I had to turn down the TED talk that I was going to do because my new job would not let me off to do it. So I have to start all over again.
Well, for any of the listeners, if you probably have never sat through a whole 18-minute TEDx talk or a TED talk, and I don't blame you. But if you want to get the gist of it, there's this great video out there. It's kind of a parody. And I think it's like if you type in "the duck goes quack" on YouTube, it's basically this guy on a stage just ripping apart every TEDx talk ever made, and he just stands
it's
up
actually
there
really great.
Yeah, he's like, "The duck goes quack," and then he pauses for a minute, like real thoughtfully, and they pan to the audience, and everybody's like nodding, like they get it. Yeah, it's real good times.
Yeah, that is a real funny video. It really is. So when did you do your TED talk?
In the spring of 2015, so last year.
Gotcha. Last year.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
See, it's odd. For me, it was like I put my toes to the edge, and then somebody else, another veteran, was like, shove me forward kind of a deal. Because nice. I didn't realize that it was... Oh, we were in the window, and they were accepting applications. And so... it was one of those where I was like, okay, I definitely knew that's on my bucket list as well, but it was one of those where I needed to put in the application and then the video, and it took me a while to get one cut, and eventually it went through, and then there was a series of interviews, and they kind of like trimmed fat around, I guess, I have no idea, and whittled it down, and then you got your speakers out of it.
And you snuck in under the wire, huh?
Right, exactly. Bottom of the barrel. They were like, woo! Yeah, all right, we'll put a veteran face on it, I guess. Jesus. All right, whatever. So, yeah. That was... Well, and folks ask. I mean, have you ever been asked, how'd you get a TED Talk?
Oh yeah, all the time. And actually, I'm part of the National Speakers Association, this great professional community of speakers. And all the folks in the organization that local to me wanted to know how it happened too. So I put together a little kind of a 2-page guide to how I made it happen, and I'm happy to share it with you. And you can throw it on the website in case any of the listeners are interested.
Nice. The National Speakers Association as well. Yeah, that was something else that I myself thought about getting into. Is that a positive thing?
Yeah, a real positive thing. There's two different things that help people get better speaking, if you want to use really correct grammar. Toastmasters, which is an international organization where you get to practice how not to put your hands in your pockets and use filler words like and ah and like. They don't teach you anything about the business, though. It's just great practice for the technical part of speaking. So if you ever have a job interview or you want to be able to explain to your wife why you just rolled in at 3 a.m. and you want to like sound credible when you're doing it, Toastmasters, great organization. I competed in their international world speaking competition in 2014 and made it into the top 20. So that was a really, really great time.
Wow.
Very
cool.
The National Speakers Association is the business side. So if you want to figure out how do I take all these great stories I have, whether from the military or my general life experience, and how do people pay me to tell them, the National Speakers Association is the organization to learn how to do that.
Very cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I also will attest to the Toastmasters awesomeness. Literally, sitting there and you're being the and ah monitor, during your regular meeting was pretty hysterical. I went to Toastmasters for almost 2 years. And then, it was really funny and then you don't realize how much you actually say, and,
right. Pet words.
You have no idea
until
somebody starts pointing it out and you're like, yeah, you said 14 times. No, I didn't. But you sure did. Really funny.
That's something where I myself haven't experienced Toastmasters. That's something that we did to one another as combat marksmanship trainers in Quantico.
See, there you go. You just said it.
Right. I did it on purpose. But the idea there is you're nailing somebody. It's murder boarding them, essentially. And so if anybody goes back and does the, good to go. See, but we were brutal. We'd sit in the back of the classroom and go like, ah!
That's pretty much how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really funny.
Yeah.
So Shoshin.
Yeah.
So the name of the company is what? Shoshin
Consulting. Yep.
Consulting. Funny story really quick. I was at a Zen Buddhist monastery yesterday learning to meditate.
Very cool.
Zen Mountain Monastery is the exact name of it. It's actually right outside Woodstock, New York. So the monastery itself is very cool. The rest of the surrounding area is about as hippity-dippity as it gets, as you can imagine. But really cool. So they, would walk around saying, Shoshin to each other. Actually, they were talking about, that some of the young, what do they call it? Like lay people, I guess is what you would say. That's what they called them. Was Shoshin. So that was kind of funny.
Yeah, I had the opportunity while I was in the Air Force. Actually, they sent me over to Yokota, which some Marines probably have passed through here and there. And I took off on a train from Yokota, got a couple days of leave, and ended up at this little mountain temple in Iwama, Japan, where this martial art Aikido was founded. And they still train like traditional warrior monks there, like standing under waterfalls and raking the gravel and like 3 or 4 martial arts classes a day, and then you're working in the garden when you're not doing that. So it wore me out, like worse than boot camp, worse than any PT session I ever had in the Corps.
Hell yeah.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. Really, really fun times.
Wow.
Yeah. Holy crap.
So, hey, and kind of like shifting gears, and then we'll start wrapping things up here. Tell us more about this book, Pivot Point. Turn on a dime without sacrificing results.
Yeah, so I had to figure out how do I get this kind of methodology, this message that I bring into companies into a book form so that I could share it with people. So even if people never saw me or saw any of my videos online, they could still kind of get an idea about what I was about and the value I had, or what I'd learned in the Marine Corps, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So the book hasn't hit Amazon yet. We're still fishing out for publishers right now because I'd like to be able to get it into bookstores before I end up, maybe having to self-publish it just to get the word out. But what I did was I took a mission that we ran in Fallujah in 2004. I didn't know it at the time, but they'd call it Dead Man's Patrol because they didn't expect any of us to come back. And it had one of our favorite generals, General Mattis. He was the guy who was leading the patrol. So they loaded us up into 15 Humvees, sent us into the middle of Fallujah. They shut the entire city down, no patrols in or out. And our job was to negotiate a ceasefire with these tribal leaders. They were sheikhs of some kind or another. So 15 of us, or 15 vehicles, maybe 20 or 30 of us all together, just rolling into Fallujah to meet with these guys. And they expected us to be taken hostage. Like that was the plan. So as we're rolling into Fallujah, I'm looking out and I see all of this artillery, all of these helicopters staged, like, a bunch of infantry battalions just dug in. It was going to be Black Hawk Down. And come to find out, General Mattis, of course, would have killed everybody just by waving his hand a couple times had it come to that. Didn't, thankfully. So we rolled into and out of Fallujah without a shot being fired. And I'm talking like the middle of downtown city center Fallujah. And that, as to my best of my knowledge, that had never happened before, nor has it happened since to an American patrol. So I took this mission and I said, all right, what did we learn from this? Or how can I use it to describe what the military's methodology is for how we can be successful? And of course, there was a planning session where people, lined up all the threats and resources that they had encountered in Fallujah in the past. They came up with a course of action. General Mattis was involved. The guys on the ground that would be driving the patrol were involved. So it was kind of this open planning that you really don't get a lot in corporate America, or very little. But it allowed us to have a successful plan. And of course, everybody was briefed in before the patrol stepped. You guys remember sitting through a bunch of those, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
But everybody knew exactly, what the route was going to be, what the egress was going to look like, what our contingency plan was. I mean, everybody had good knowledge of that. Even the lower level guys like me, I was just a corporal, knew this before we stepped out on the patrol. We executed. We had to shift fields of fire. Even a guy like me as a correspondent, because they didn't have a lot of people on this patrol, even I had to cover a sector of fire. Everybody was really nervous because, they made sure I knew what the dangerous end of the weapon was before I started pointing it at people, right? But even I had a job that I had to shift gears in, just like we all did, right?
Yeah.
You're a driver 1 minute, you're a radio guy the next, maybe you're calling in artillery a minute later. You always have a different shifting job, but we're trained in how to do that. And then finally, after we made it back out, what that after action session looked like. How we were able to debrief that to figure out we just made it in and out of one of the most dangerous places on the planet without getting killed. How do we do that again? Because maybe it'll save a life. So that whole process, what I did in this book was break it down, what we used in the military to be successful, and then applied it into business situations so that Mr. or Mrs. CEO or the plant manager or the guy out on the sales call could use it as well and be successful.
Beautiful. God. And you're sending me a copy of this? Am I getting one of these?
Yep, you're getting one of those.
You're like, am I getting one of these?
No, we already discussed it. Nah. He offered earlier. I'm not being the little bitch here.
Can I please get one?
Can I get one? Hey,
I want it signed too, Sean.
Oh, of course, man. I'll take a real special picture.
See, now you are.
There.
There you go. You're getting a dip pic.
That's right.
That's gonna be awesome.
Shit. Awesome.
It's gonna be all bushy.
You're an idiot.
Shoshin.
Yeah, there are a lot of great people that have gotten out of the military from Iraq, Afghanistan, even from Desert Storm, Desert Shield, and Vietnam, who are applying what they learned to help people, not just in business, but in life. So I think it's amazing how there's this great movement of people trying to figure out how do we take the good out of what was potentially a crappy situation and use it to fuel ourselves forward in life. And so that may lead into the work I'm doing with veterans locally in helping them transition from college or university over into the job field. And half of it is really a mindset thing. We hear a lot about post-traumatic stress right now, but there's an entirely new field of psychology growing called post-traumatic growth. Have you guys heard anything about that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's really coming about. How do we take this crappy situations and use it as fuel to motivate ourselves forward to having a healthy family relationship, to getting a good career and kind of living our dreams out there in the world. And so that's really what I'm helping veterans with locally, that and some job skills like how to not send your resume to 1,000 people, which I find is a helpful piece of advice.
Right.
Yeah. Or actually, let's write your resume so it's not so crappy.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Yeah. Let's learn how to translate information from militaryese to civilianese, and then let's write your resume. You know?
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned resumes. The course that I am participating in as a facilitator over at the University of South Florida, they have a great veterans program there that all of the students have to go through. It's a requirement. If you're on the GI Bill at this university, you have to go through this extra class. It's almost like an elective you get credit for. Yep. And what I tell them is, here's the way that I would break down finding a job if I had to do it all over again. And because my job is literally to get hired anew every single time I sit in front of a new CEO, I'm constantly interviewing for a job. Like that's my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't do it by pumping out resumes. And so the way that I help, these veterans understand it is I say, if you have to write a resume, it should be the very last thing on your to-do list. And if you play the system right, you don't need a resume at all. So something like 80% of the jobs available on the market never actually hit the classifieds. They're never posted on Monster. They're never publicly advertised. So I tell veterans that your job is to network person to person or get on the phone with people who you think might be able to hire you.
Mm-hmm.
Sell them on your value by offering them value first. What do you need that I can help you with? Learn about the company, learn about the job, find out if it's actually right for you before you waste 15 years in a job you may hate. And then finally, when it comes time for an opening to appear somewhere in that organization or in an organization they know about, your name comes up. And if you have to write a resume, it's a formality because they already know you're the person they want.
Right.
Nice.
True.
I mean, it's targeting it and prioritizing those targets as well as far as your networking is concerned. Is that what I'm hearing also?
Yeah, it's kind of like thinking of yourself as a sniper as opposed to a machine gunner.
There you go. I can appreciate that analogy.
Me too. Yeah, I like it.
Very cool, man. Well, shit, I really appreciate your time today, Shawn. This has been fantastic having you on the show. I was really looking forward to this recording especially because I love seeing an adjacent unit springboarding off of what we learned in the course. So that's awesome, dude. I commend you. Keep adding value to the world, man.
Yeah, you as well. Keep sharing the great stories of the Marines and the corpsmen and the ancillary units that, get on your show, man. We need to hear that veterans are doing good things, that they're coming out of war and actually making something of their lives.
Absolutely.
Nice. Awesome. Well, folks, if you haven't already done so, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. You can find us now on iTunes, Stitcher, Player FM, and pretty much any other aggregator that plays podcasts.
Exists.
So we would really appreciate a review. Please, by all means, I love to put my hand on the scale, maybe say 5 stars. I'm throwing it out there. Shawn, little help here?
If you add 4 and 1, you get 5. And so that's how you make 5 stars.
See? Shoshin.
That's right.
Yeah, man. Well, it's good having you on here, brother. Thank you so much. Semper Fidelis to you. And,
Semper Fidelis.
And you take care and be well. Folks out there in Radio Land, thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you on another episode here not too long. And now, on that note, we cue the music.